Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick, Doctor Who season whatever.
34.
Episode 4, Time Heist, Alonso, Duralde, William Bibbiani. Have a look.
This is the bank of Carol Black sauce.
Picture the thing you want most in the universe. And decide how badly you want it.
We're actually going to do it. Rob the bank.
If we don't, we die.
We must locate them.
What is that? I don't know. Hate not knowing.
Are you hungry, boy?
Before we get going, it's actually episode 5. You said 4.
Did I? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
So, just clarifying, stop correcting us on YouTube. We already got it. Now, Alonso, again, I think when Jenna is here, and Jenna can't be here this week, we get a little geeky, and we kind of leave you out sometimes, and I feel bad about that. But I want your take on this, because I have a take on this that is very much related to previous seasons.
Yeah, I saw some of your comments on Facebook. As a Doctor Who noob, I was totally entertained by this episode.
Okay.
I thought it was terrific, and you are not so into it.
Well,
so what's that about?
Okay, well, for me, a lot of it has to do with defining Peter Capaldi as a new version of the Doctor. And this seems like the sort of capery, fun episode that it seems like Matt Smith or David Tennant or Christopher Eccleston or heck, even Tom Baker would have had like a lot of fun with. And yet Capaldi's dead serious interpretation of the Doctor, it didn't seem like there was anything about the heist itself for him to latch onto and get excited about. It sounded like he was just sort of going with a plan and being just sort of morbidly serious about it, and I wasn't having as much fun as I could have.
I don't think he's dead serious.
Okay.
I find Capaldi to be funny. I find him to be very sort of
comparatively serious. Let me put it that way.
Okay, maybe so.
But fair.
Maybe
But exactly my point.
He's my first Doctor.
He's your Doctor.
He's my Doctor. I find him funny. I find him very deadpan and droll, and so I am open to him doing this kind of, sort of nutty cloak and dagger stuff.
But that was my initial interpretation, and then what I realized was, and I still think it's a problem, the issue is, it's not that the Doctor isn't enthusiastic about the heist, it's that his enthusiasm for the heist and saving these creatures and righting an old wrong, which does fit very thematically with what he's trying to be as a Doctor, is all in the stuff we don't see. It's all in the planning, and that's sort of revealed at the end, Ocean's 11 style. Here's what was really, really going on. So I feel like the focus might have been off just a little bit. But I do have to admit, this is a very cleverly constructed episode. Yeah. A lot of mysterious pieces come together in a clever way. Doctor Who usually does a really good job of sort of setting things up and paying them off, but only paying them off with information you receive later, so you couldn't have predicted what the payoff was.
Sure.
And that's very clever.
No, I like the premise that they've all voluntarily had their memories wiped. It's like, wait, what? And so then you, like them, are sort of retroactively trying to fit the pieces back together, and then, comes the big reveal. But no, I had fun with it. I have to admit, I did just go see the Ghostbusters 30th anniversary reissue that's in theaters, and so when he kept warning them to clear their minds because the teller was going to read their guilt or whatever, I immediately thought, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. But no, I thought this was a really fun episode.
All right, well, let me ask you about this question, because this is something I think is starting to turn a lot of people off about this particular season of The Doctor. Is his treatment of his companion is very snipey, very rude. It's almost insulting to her in a lot of ways at a lot of times. That's turning a lot of people off. It's starting to bother me as well. What do you think of that?
Again, I have no basis of comparison.
Not supposed to comparison, but does that make you like him less? Does that how does that affect your appreciation?
I like that. I think they have kind of an interestingly bristly relationship, and I think that as much as he might be occasionally condescending to her, she is always smart enough to retort or to just sort of like raise an eyebrow or make it clear that he's
got kind of a his girl Friday kind of vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
To it.
Like he may think that about her, but we are not meant to think that the show thinks that about her. You know, so I find it kind of charming. I don't have other Doctor companion relationships to base it on.
That's why I'm asking you. That's why I think it's because everyone else having this conversation has that basis of comparison.
Yeah,
so
no, I think the show is invested enough in Clara's ability and moxie and smarts and all that stuff that even if he may be harumphy toward her, it's not like we're meant to go, oh yeah, you're right, she's an idiot. You know, it's like we're meant to be like, well, you're an old crank and she's holding her own, so just let her do her thing. Yeah. And that works as a way to have characters relate to each other.
At the beginning of the season, one of the last things Capaldi said at the first episode was, I'm not your boyfriend, I'm not gonna pretend to be your boyfriend. And then the last thing he says in this episode was, how's that for a date, or beat that for a date?
Right.
Do you think they're backtracking a bit? Do you think they are trying to retroactively make him, if not romantically inclined than at least jealously trying to monopolize her time?
I think the latter. I think that, you know, yeah, he's very clear about like that he's not the boyfriend doctor, but at the same time, as soon as this fella starts taking up more of her time, then he does feel conflicted about that, not because he's in love with her, but because like, no, you're supposed to be my companion. We're supposed to be hopping into the TARDIS with no notice and gadding off to do whatever. So I think there's a jealousy there that's about companionship and not about romance.
Okay. What are other observations you have about this episode, just in general?
I thought the shapeshifter character was interesting. I mean, she reminded me a lot of who's the X-Men? Rogue, right? Who can never touch anyone.
Right.
You know, and obviously they got the hunkiest cyborg in the universe to be computer brain guy, you know, but he was fine. You know, I liked the idea of this sort of Gringotts that they've created, this universal bank of all the special things.
Yeah. Were you a Farscape fan? Did you ever watch Farscape?
Never saw it.
There is a great, I would actually argue it's better than this one. They did a bank heist episode of Farscape. Huh. That is one of the great episodes, or I think it's a two-parter, but whatever. It's just this really incredible episode of Farscape. That had so much more fun and so much more danger to it, but what this one had was the mystery element.
Sure.
And I thought the way, and you backtrack and you look in and you see like the people the Doctor selected for this mission and the way that they were perfectly situated to give him the information he needed to figure it out. Right. Like here is a woman who will sort of represent the whole cloning aspect that will give me the clue I need to figure out who the architect was, and then I can remember why I was here. Yeah. That's good writing.
I'm not going to know later why I hired you to do this, but that's why I'm hiring you. Yeah, it's a weirdly convoluted thing. Strangely enough, just as you asked about Farscape, I've never watched Doctor Who before the season, but for random reasons, it's a long story to explain. That's not all that interesting. I have seen every episode of Torchwood. Go figure.
Yeah. So you enjoyed it, I take it?
It was fine, yeah.
Okay,
it was for work. I did a set visit when they did their season that was half in LA, and I had to kind of get caught up, and then I watched that season when it aired. But I probably the only person who started watching Torchwood with no Doctor Who background whatsoever.
Right. Well, the reason I'm placing an emphasis on you, one is because I value your opinion as a noob, but also because I feel like Time Heist is somewhat of a disposable episode overall. It doesn't really build anything. They haven't really gone back to the whole afterlife aspect in a while. It's sort of a done-in-one, decent story, and I still feel like it probably would have been better served with another Doctor who would have just been getting off on the curiosity of it all, as opposed to like Matt Smith would have just thought it was fascinating. Well, we're doing heists.
You have to understand, of the episodes I've seen are the one with the dinosaur, the one with Robin Hood. Listen, whatever the third one was.
Into the Dalek was the second one.
Sorry, the Dalek one. And this one. So it's not like any of these have been these massive epic arcs. They're all kind of self-contained.
Well, that's often true, but it tends to build to something bigger.
I mean, Listen obviously is throwing out hooks to something that's probably going to come up again later.
And what I loved about Listen was that it felt like a story that couldn't be told with any other interpretation of the Doctor. And the episodes that have not really gotten me this season, like Robot of Sherwood, feels like they would have been more fun with a different version. And I feel like they're still finding their voice with this one. And they haven't quite nailed it yet. They came really close with Listen, but then they backtracked a little bit. So I'm very excited to see where we're going to go. I hope they figure out exactly what the season is, because the pacing is strange.
Let me ask you, is there usually a process when a new Doctor starts that it takes a few episodes to get that guy's groove?
Generally speaking, yes. Generally speaking, absolutely. But what's different with this particular Doctor as opposed to the previous several, and many of the ones in the past, is that it's less of a lark discovering it. It's not so much like, Christopher Eccleston transforms into David Tennant. David Tennant immediately sword fights an alien over England, ousts the Prime Minister, and then goes to fight werewolves with the Queen of England. It's much more moody, and him trying to figure out who he is and getting really obsessive, and that's novel. I'm certainly enjoying the process, but it's not as manic, I think it is. And as a result, it's easier to stay entertained while they work out the kinks. And here I'm finding myself falling in and out of it, thinking to myself often when he's bantering with Robin Hood, this would be funnier if David Tennant did it. You know, but again, I'm looking at it through context, and I like that you're enjoying it.
I'm a fan of this actor in other stuff, so I
great.
so I like seeing this, and I'm old, so maybe I am less interested in this sort of like youthful, you know.
It's not so much youth; it's enthusiasm.
Sure.
The thing I loved about Listen was that he really, it's like even if he had to invent the problem himself, he was obsessed with solving a problem, obsessed with a mystery, obsessed with an equation that needs to be completed. And I thought that was a really interesting take on it that really wasn't something I'd seen too much before in the Doctor. That felt very appropriate.
But couldn't you apply that to this episode too, where he's also sort of retroactively solving his own presence in this paper?
No, sure. It just seemed like his enthusiasm wasn't as much for it as it was in Listen, for example. But maybe I'm nitpicking. Maybe I'm just overly sensitive to it. I don't know. But anyway, fun episode, just not a great one.
Fair enough.
Not a great one.
Jenna, we hope will be back with us next week. And thank you, Tom, for getting me this episode after TiVo and Time Warner conspired to make me miss it.
Damn you, Time Warner!
Catch you next time.